Hi folks, this is All the Fruit, and today we are searching for an ancient lost almond orchard in Germany. You might think almonds in Germany, yeah, in supermarkets and in Mandel cakes maybe, and in almond cakes maybe, but in Germany is not really well known for growing almonds. Well, the almonds, they come originally from the area of Persia and Afghanistan, were domesticated probably 4,000 to 5,000 years ago. And nowadays the US produces more than half of the world production, California almonds. However, in the area of the Vorderpfalz in Germany, the most Mediterranean climate and vegetation, there was actually a traditional almond cultivation for quite some time. We think that the Romans introduced the almonds here, and that in the time of the Holy Roman Empire, which was not the Roman Empire but the German Empire, the area of the Vorderpfalz, where we are now, actually provided most of the almonds consumed in Central Europe. Now where are the almonds? Here they are. Look, there is a whole avenue of almonds. We are here at the Weinstraße, the so-called Wine Street, which is this street first, but secondly it's also the name of this whole wine growing area, where about a quarter of the German wine production is produced. The Weinstraße was introduced as a tourist area by Adolf with a strange mustache, because he wanted his Germans to enjoy beautiful landscape somewhere in Germany. He took the least German looking countryside and made it into the first tourist street in Germany. It's about 60 kilometers long. Kallstadt an der Weinstraße. We are starting our search for the German elms in Kallstadt, the little village where Trump's ex-president Donald Trump's family comes from. And here, you might think almonds are growing everywhere. Yes, they've been planted here for many decades for the tourists, not so much for the almond seeds. Oh, somebody has been foraging here, because I see a lot of husks, but no almonds. Well, we'll find a couple. This is not a traditional almond. It's not what the Romans introduced to this area. It's not the local almond variety of the Dürkheimer Krachmandel, which is typical for the area of Bad Dürkheim, where we are now. Those are the peach almonds. They were usually bred in the Mediterranean, or maybe somewhere else, as a rootstock for almond varieties. They are very hardy. They can stand frost, drought, mistreatment, poor soils, hard to kill, and you can graft some tastier almond variety on them. They actually do produce edible. Well, let's take a rock. We need a big rock for those. This rock is a bit small. They actually do produce edible seeds, but the rind is much thicker. And in this one, oh, those are bitter. Yeah. Those are bitter. That means they are not edible but toxic. Yeah. Since this is a rootstock / ornamental variety, of course the purity and the toxicity are not being controlled. So some of them can be bitter. Here in this area, they are not being grown as rootstock for the second one was sweet now. The first one was bitter, the second one was sweet. And I think they both came from this tree, because the other trees go 10 meters apart. Yeah, as I said, no quality management of the fruits, because the two uses of this one is as a rootstock and as an ornament. It's no coincidence they were grown here along the Weinstraße, because here Many tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, maybe even more people come here every spring to look at the flowering almond trees. So you grow them, and of course you don't grow the small trees with whitish flowers, blooming late, frost sensitive, of the old fruit varieties. You grow something that is hardy, doesn't need any care, flowers very early, and has huge dark pink flowers like the peach almond. So you can find a lot of almonds around here, but 99, maybe even 99.9% will be the peach almond. It's very hard to find something else. Here, look at that. That's one of the oldest almond trees I found anywhere in Germany, maybe the oldest. And I'm just a year or two too late. Look at this beauty. Look at the trunk. The trunk is what? 70 centimeters thick. Almonds usually grow quite slowly. Well, when was this probably planted? It would be really funny if it was planted in the 30s when Adolf made the street. But it could also be planted maybe at some time in the 60s, 70s, probably 70s when they widened the street. I don't know. I don't even know what it is exactly. Definitely an almond. Here you can see the leaves. But is it an ornamental peach almond? Or is it one of the old tasty almonds? Just an hour ago we found a tree almost as impressive as this one inside the village of Kallstadt, and it actually had the old-fashioned edible almonds with tin rind, with tin shell. Oh, a big almond tree over there. Oh, that's one of the biggest I've seen around here. Look at that. Is it possible that it's one of the old soft almond varieties? The fruits, the seeds look small and of a different color. Hey, we might get lucky here. This might be a Dürkheimer Krachmandel. Oh yeah! Wow. What a find. This is not the peach almond. The traditional local almond. And the tree of considerable size too. I'm really glad I found this one. Later I want to look for a whole almond plantation which was lost half a century ago here, but could still exist somewhere in the shrubbery. But this one, I would really like to know if it's an ornamental or an edible one. The main crown was cut down pretty recently. I think this year was cut maybe 1 or 2 years ago, but this year quite recently. You can still see the dried up leaves. So this was done just weeks ago. Here are two fruits. Well, they were definitely not fully developed, but I still want to check if they are the ornamental variety or an old almond variety. Here, almond wood is quite hard. Oh, yeah. This is definitely the peach almond. They were cut down too early for their seeds to develop, but look at the thickness of the shell and how hard it is. You can basically use this like a stone tool. It's hard and sharp. So okay, a beautiful ancient tree, but it's an ornamental. If we are trying to find remnants of the ancient almond production, actually this area might be one of the worst in Germany because of a law which actually was introduced by Hitler. Why? Because he wanted to build the highways to invade the rest of Europe. But the law was used not only for highways. It's the law for a so-called Flurbereinigungsverfahren. You take a nice old traditional countryside and you turn it into a checkerboard of giant fields. And this area here All of it has been turned into it, except for those steep areas here along this, along those little cliffs. And it looks like this for over 100 kilometers, all the way from the area of Mainz and Frankfurt in the north to the French border in the south. Finding old fruit trees or even ancient fruit trees is very difficult here, because every square meter was converted to produce grapes on an industrial scale. Actually, there is almost nothing except for roads and villages, which is not a grapevine. There are a couple things like around this little pond, there are a couple trees, including the tasty service tree, but its season seems to be over already. Oh no, I see a couple more fruits. Service trees have incredibly tasty fruits, but with all this toilet paper, I don't know. Oh yeah, some tasty and quite big fruits. I want them. Oh, also here you can see a lot of super rare vegetation, super rare Mediterranean vegetation used to grow here. Here a rare linum species. Some of those linum species just grow in a handful of places in Germany, and here this one is being overgrown by planted hedges. Oh well, let's try the service tree fruits. They're only edible when they look brown and rotten. And actually here the service tree is spreading. Those youngsters were not planted here. I don't even think they are seedlings. I think they are suckers. Really nice that it's spreading. It was planted, but it's native to this area, so good that it's spreading. Oh, here another nice and tasty tree. A cherry plum. We are in the beginning of October, and it's good. Sweet and delicious. This service tree is growing a lot of fruits. Let's try the ones on the ground. This one looks soft. Delicious. This one is half soft. Should be already edible enough. It's like eating some dessert. Or some baked apple. Okay, nice. We got service berries. We got cherry plums. But if you want to find relics of the old almond cultivation, of the old historic almond cultivation, this is not a relic area. This is an area that has been completely bulldozed. Where can we look for it? Where we look for it? In the village. And found one old almond. Not as big that we could be sure that it's from the old almond, commercial almond cultivating time, but at least we found an old almond with soft shells and tasty seeds. But we must find some other relic area. What are relic areas? Areas which haven't been disturbed for a long time, where you can find remnants of old vegetation, old cultivation, old architecture and so on. Well, here we have a lot of old trucks moving along the street. I hope you caught them all. Yeah, they like to move their old timers on the weekend so that we can admire them. I approve of this. I like old timers. I wouldn't go through the effort to care for one myself, but I like when I see them. Here another big old fruit tree has been cut down. However, those are cherry tree suckers. So I guess it was a cherry tree. Sorry, those are cherry plum suckers. So I guess this was either a cherry plum tree, like the one back there, or some other plum grafted on a cherry plum. Sad to see such an old fruit tree gone, but at least it's not an old almond tree. Here we see a couple other nice, really old peach almond trees. Probably planted at the same time as the other one. This one is probably well over 60 centimeters across. This one is slightly smaller. Also you can see all the other trees that were planted along the street for beauty purposes and to showing the people something else but grapevines. German medlars, walnuts. Don't know if the cherry plum was planted or is feral. It's a bush in this case. Here another one and another one. But in general the whole area is a little bit too non-relic in order to find some relics like ancient almond plantations here. Yeah, not so clear where to find relic locations around here. Well, there is at least one, the so-called Berntal, this prominent or rather indentated little valley. As you can see, there is some wine cultivation at the bottom of the valley. Germans from all other wine cultivating areas would just cringe seeing this, but around here it exists. However, the slopes are the slopes are too steep. They wouldn't be too steep for wine cultivation anywhere else in Germany, but around here people are a bit comfortable, so they wouldn't grow wine at such at such steep slopes. When I was young, there were still a couple relic vineyards on the slopes of this little valley. But this is not the reason we are here. Well, even the ones at the bottom seem to become relics. Actually, about 30 years ago, I read that there are efforts to restore this valley, to make like a mixture of vineyards, meadows, and overgrown areas. Well, back then it was mostly overgrown areas. And on the other side, I will show you this in a moment, there are some areas with really exquisite, really super rare vegetation, which were made a nature reserve, as far as I remember, over 100 years ago. Well, later the nature reserve was expanded to encompass the whole little valley, but yeah, it still looks kinda rich in aggressive alien flora and not restored the way people plan to do it. You see, 30 years ago, those people who were in charge of restoring this, they were insisting to start from this site, because that's the site where they started. I said, folks, I can tell you there are no rare plant species here, also no special animal species. The climate here on the northern slopes is not very interesting. The gigantic, or the tiny but very elite hotspot of biodiversity is over there on the southern slopes. That's what you should restore. And then I decided, nah, not worth my effort. Not gonna help them if they restore the boring parts instead of those parts over here. Mediterranean climate, crazy flora, long list of rare plants over there and also rare animals. I found a couple which I haven't published even now. This now is a good relic location. But why are we here? Aren't we searching for the ancient almond groves of the Holy Roman Empire? But why are we here in this area? Actually, there used to be a country road here which they have demolished and made it into a hiking trail. Okay, that's not a bad idea. Well, because when standing on top of those little cliffs up there, can you see them? Actually, a lot more of them, but they are hidden behind the shrubs. They are like 4 to 5 meters tall in the highest part. The area underneath them was completely overgrown, but somewhere around here, 30 years ago, in this overgrown area, completely inaccessible. You could actually see a bunch of old almond trees. I mean, it's a bit of a far cry. 30 years ago I saw a lot of old almond relics, and to hope that they are still here. But I'm not giving up. And I think I can see a couple trees there which could or could not be almond trees. Yeah, I would totally know how to cross this stuff here with the big bad weed whacker. I have a collection of those, but I have no contract for this nature reserve. I actually did some habitat management here about 20 years ago, but it was quite small scale. However, here in the background it seems that grazing with goats and also some habitat management have opened some passages under those trees. But those are either feral cherry trees or an old cherry garden. Some locals over there foraging for blackberries. Here some locals foraging for rose hips. It's really nice that, well, technically it's absolutely illegal to forage for any fruits here in the nature reserve, but I find it really nice that the locals have not abandoned all the foraging yet. Literally a goat path, although I highly suspect that in this case this is rather a deer or a boar path. Well, we don't care. We advance. Somewhere here was the area where 30 years ago I could spot the almond trees. The leaves looked like almond leaves. In spring the trees flowered like almonds. In winter the branches looked like almond leaves. I guess this area was too remote and the period of this was too early for this to have any ornamental purpose. Here you can see those used to be vineyard terraces. The cherry trees are growing too close to the terrace too regularly, so this is not an old cherry plantation and they are too young for this. Those are feral cherries. Hawthorn, rose hips, nice relic location here, and definitely much easily accessible than 30 years ago, because believe me, I did try back then, but I failed. Prunus mahaleb, a cherry species of dry, sunny, arid locations, typical for dry areas in Syria, Turkey, the Mediterranean, and the driest parts of Germany. In other parts, before the climate change, it grew mostly on the railroad and factory areas. Oregon grape is quite invasive in Germany, and here you see its native relative, the European barberry. This one, yeah, again the Nazis, they did a big extermination campaign for this because it is the this is a good variety, tasty and sour. Most are actually bitter. Now, the barberry served as a sort of host for ergot. Ergot is fungus on the grains, and ergot in the Middle Ages. Well, nowadays historians explain everything with ergot. The witch hunt, there was ergot in the grains and made the people crazy. Pilgrimages, if there is ergot in the grains and you are possessed by demons, you just make a pilgrimage, go to some other area where you buy bread from an area which is not infested by ergot. Yeah, you are healed because of the pilgrimage, literally. The dancing plague of Strasbourg here nearby, where hundreds of people danced themselves to death because of ergot. And so the Nazis decided, well, how to remove ergot. Fungicides are expensive. destroying the grapes is not an option, so we'll just destroy the barberries. And that's why in Germany it's still quite rare, even 70 years after the Nazis. It didn't stop with the Nazis. Later, they destroyed more berries. This is a good tasty one, folks. Most of them are a mix of sour and bitter. This is just sour. This is a good discovery. My beautiful but camera shy assistant found a couple of the Prunus mahaleb seeds. Those are being used in some Middle Eastern cuisine similar to bitter almonds. The fruits are also kind of ediblish but also bitter. Random pieces of ancient equipment. I think this was some part of some cart. Now it's some part of some tree. Everything getting incredibly overgrown. Oh, difficult to navigate. Not a single old almond tree poking above the shrubbery. A rubble wall well over 2 meters high. Yeah, I remember 1 or 2 such edges sticking above the vegetation with other rare vegetation on them. Here, this grass I remember was something rare. Everything else I can see now is are weeds. Back there you could see a couple such, yeah, those edges with rare vegetation. You would cry why they don't clean them. Vegetation which really had just a handful of locations here in Germany, and now, at least here, it's overgrown by weeds. Yeah, looking down on the vineyards in the valley and the northern slopes which are of no particular biological interest. And here, yeah, everything overgrown, almost everything overgrown with Prunus mahaleb. Did I mention that it's spiny too? There are 2 or 3 bigger things here. Now I can't remember, there were 5 or 6 almonds left. And down there, near the trail, I see something that looks like an almond. This needs to be checked out later. For now, we are up here. Another barberry shrub. However, the taller thing I saw here seems to be a cherry plum or Prunus mahaleb behind it. The ruin of an old tree. What is it? It's definitely a Prunus. However, this type of bark, I'd rather say it's a cherry. Probably grew quite slow on this slope here, so it's possible that it was planted. Some of those planted cherries on dry slopes, they don't grow much in decades. Oh well. Another cherry stump over there. However, up there I see something that could be an almond. An old pole. This pole could be older than me, but back then they used to treat them with poisonous stuff. Completely illegal now. No, what I thought could be an almond from the bark is actually just another Prunus mahaleb. Well, it's the same genus, but that doesn't help me. Skull. Oh. Oh. The skull of a fox. Yeah. Well, no badger because here this ridge would be more elevated. However, done a lot of chewing. I still think it's a fox. Well, the Germans not only lost the battle against the barberries, also the battle against the foxes raged on for decades, and the Germans lost it. People are talking about the Australian Emu War or about the Chinese war on sparrows, but Google the German war on foxes, because this was a big military undertaking with helicopters, poison chicken, poisoned chicken heads and stuff, and the Germans lost at the end. And yeah, here is one of the veterans of this war. To be honest, this could have been one of the this could totally have been one of the almond trees because 10 meters further down I spot almond foliage. Here, see it? Is there almond foliage further up? More berberries here. No. Okay, so down it is. You know how you know that this agricultural area, those vineyard and orchard terraces were abandoned very early? There are no ornamentals at all. So they were never used as ornamental gardens. They went from being used as agricultural gardens to being used to just being abandoned. Normally, at least here in Germany, there is also like a period of a couple decades where those agricultural areas are being intermixed with recreational gardens. But actually often you cannot really tell the difference. Here, by the way, in the background, an old fallen fruit tree, no more bark. Definitely a Prunus, but not sure which one. Well, what do you call it when somebody has an orchard, puts a couple ornamental trees between the fruit trees, puts a little playground for the kids and so on? Is it still a fruit orchard or is it an ornamental garden? But there is nothing like this here. But what is here is an almond, an old almond tree. Where was the other one I saw? Okay, there is the one next to the trail. Here is the dead one. I just bypassed it. My assistant is somewhere far behind. My assistant is this white spot over there. So see, this one without the bark is most probably an almond tree. I'm not going back because here I have the real deal. And look at that. The old almond tree looks dead. However, this young one, I don't even think it's a seedling. I think it's a root sucker. The young one is still here. This is the foliage I saw from above. Look at that. Definitely almond. There is no other Prunus around here with such leaves. A peach would have similar leaves, but and look at that. There is another one. There are a couple other ones down in the open. Okay, so this one, I think the parent is dead, but the rootstock is still there. But down there are two more good trees. So, oh, freak. Another goatee fence. Well, that goatee fence is not sufficient defense against us. Now the good question is this an active fence? First, you listen to it. Be quiet. I cannot hear the fence. Next thing is touch it with a little plant. Cannot feel the fence. Okay, next step, do the, what is it called? Macarena, conga, lambada. What is this dance where you go under the thing? It's the what? Well, whatever, we are doing it. Beautiful, but camera share assistant remembered the name of the dance. It's the limbo. Oh, I think I'm too fat to get through that. Oh, yeah. Okay, my fat butt is through. Oh. So is my fat belly. Not the least important part, the head. Not sure if there was no electricity on this thing or if my rain jacket saved me, but definitely saved. Now we're gonna film the assistant down there. One more fence. Oh, by the way, geology. We are here on limestone, which contributes to the dryness of the area. I am a little bit concerned that I didn't see almost any of the rare plants. I think the goats have ruralized the area a lot. They have brought a lot of weeds which replace the super rare vegetation. I'm not really convinced this goat thing was a good thing. Neither are the wild boars, right? This was made by a boar or by several, not by a goat. Okay, but here we have an almond tree. And, well, those cherry trees here, look how they are planted in a row. Yeah, those are definitely cherries here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 dead cherries, and this was a row of at least 10. Cherries were definitely planted. And here the almond tree, look at that. The old almond tree is the only tree here protected with a fence. That means somebody with a bit of brains has devised this grazing thing. This must be one of the old almond trees. It doesn't look too impressive, to be honest. The peach almonds on the streets, they were thicker. But still, I remember those things as old trees in an overgrown, inaccessible orchard from 30 years ago. How thick is it? I would say 35 centimeters or so. And here you can see a second stem broke off a long time ago. It still hasn't rotted. If I would cut through this, I would count a ton of rings. Look at it. This was probably almost the same size it is now 30 years ago. Because even back then I remember like about 6 of those almond trees sticking out of the completely overgrown area. 30 years ago, I mean, if I walked here dozens of times and never even tried to access this place, despite really wanting to see an old almond plantation in Germany, you can imagine how inaccessible it was. Now to the important part, the fruits. A couple blackish almond mummies here. And also here part of a very important things. First thing I learned, those must have been destroyed by the wild boars, because every squirrel or other small animals would have made neither holes. Those were just bitten into pieces and the seeds were taken out. The second one is, see those? They might look thick and tough, but they are soft, they are easy to break. Those are traditional almonds. Those are not ornamental or rootstocky peach almonds. And look at that. The ground is littered. Here I throw some more with those pieces. The wild boars have been at work very thoroughly. I mean, they can also get through with their big teeth. Yeah, I found a fox skull, but not a boar skull. I would have shown you the teeth, which go through pretty much everything. They would totally go through through the hardest almond shell. So yeah, this is a total success, folks. First success, we have a beautiful hike today. Second success, we found a couple stuff to forage. And we will probably find a lot more. Third success, finally after 30 years, I confirmed firstly that I'm not stupid. For 30 years, I've told botanists, nature conservationists, everybody, that there is a hidden almond grove here in this thing. Nobody believed me that I can recognize them from 100 meters away. But I did. They are still here. They were not destroyed by recent environmental events, which is very good, because most people who do nature conservation, they would just have ignored or cut them down. We confirmed that those are the old, that those are some sort of edible almond varieties and not the ornamental ones, which are also edible under some conditions. And imagine 30 years ago this would stick out above the overgrown area. So in 30 years it maybe grew 2 meters in height and maybe what, less than 5 centimeters in diameter. So how old would this be? 60, 70, 80 years? Wow, I'm really impressed. I'm really impressed. I've wanted to do this for 30 years, folks, and now I'm here. See this? The remnants of an old bench. They didn't consider the local limestone of sufficient quality for this bench. They took sandstone. Sandstone from the higher hills in the background. 1, 2. This was a bench or something of that type. Of course the wood is long gone, but the sandstone and the metal hooks still tell the story. Yeah, I bet you wanted to see this again, you little sons of loving mothers. Oh. Yeah. You want to see a poor old fat man suffer? Oh. Well, at least this is just for goats. You know, the electricity for cows or horses, oh, it's much worse. Okay, here we are near this tree. So close to the old country road. How didn't I notice it in the 90s? Could have been overgrown completely with vines or something. A lot of this vegetation was overgrown with vines, or maybe I didn't pay attention down here because I only saw them from up there. So another almond tree again, just over a foot, maybe 35 centimeters thick. 7, 8 meters tall. And no, I don't think that those grew in the last 30 years. This was definitely here before. Beautiful. I might even have seen it from down there, but if this was really a 3-meter high bramble thicket on top of a 2-meter wall here, then yeah, I mean, together with the wall it started on it could have been a 5-meter tall bramble thicket. Maybe I decided not to go up here, but I should have studied it and waited for some almonds to drop. Back then the wild boars were not so rampant. I'm so happy, folks, that I finally found the ancient almond plantation. Maybe not of the Holy Roman Empire. This was maybe done, I don't know, during the time of the Third Reich, or maybe in the 10-15 years after that, until the start of the 60s. Beautiful. Nah, I don't wish for one of them to fall down, but it would be interesting to count the rings, because this was completely abandoned and overgrown and looking like this, just with a lot more brambles 30 years ago. Yeah, a decades-old dream of me come true. Really, really happy about this. Does this one have seeds? No, here I don't see anything. Not a single one. Okay, but it's definitely an almond, and from the other one we can deduce that this one is most probably also a cultivated one. Firstly, because we don't find any ornamentals around here. Secondly, because in such an old time nobody would plant an ornamental here. I think, well, yeah, beautiful. Also, yeah, I don't think they were ever planted on peach almond rootstock here, because the other one there was no graft visible. Also on this one is no graft visible. Beautiful. Now the next question is how to get down the overgrown 2-meter wall. It's not the same challenge as 30 years ago, but back then I had proper pants and proper shoes at least. But you wanted to see an old man fall and break his back on this rubble wall didn't you? Oh, fuck. Huh. Okay, not so bad. Also the wall is not 2 meters high, more like 130, 140. Oh, still wonder I didn't do it when I was younger. I really think that this was completely overgrown and inaccessible. And now this one tree, hello, this one tree is totally visible from down here. Maybe I didn't pay attention when I walked down here back then. Or maybe, well, see there in the background, the two things sticking out. The cherry on the right is recognizable as a cherry. The tree on the left is so overgrown with grapevines that it's not recognizable. Maybe this was also kind of overgrown, or maybe there was another tree growing in front of it. Well, let's continue the foraging. Here we can see once more the one tree where we found the almonds up there on the rubble wall. This is well over 2 meters. This is at the edge it could probably be even 3 meters. Not like this one. This must have been truly overgrown so that I never tried it. Well, if this mass of plants was like, instead of 2 meters high, like now 5 meters high, I probably wouldn't have tried. But anyways, the one up there, so at least 3 are still there. 2 of them are alive. One made one sucker that's still alive. One up there we confirmed is probably dead. Those makes 4 trees. Back then I remember about 6. So yeah, that's not such a bad count. 4 out of 6 at least. Look at it, this one here could also have been an almond, but we didn't check it out. It's like 10 meters away from the one that made the sucker. Okay, nice, nice. Also I noticed that the zoom is slightly better than on my old phone, but it's still not the same as on a real camera. A lot has changed. This fruit orchard was planted with my money, among others, by the way. There is the crest of an NGO which I've financed for the last 30-something years, and I've put in a couple 100 hours of hard work in the 90s in it. There is still a little bit of vineyards here. Those are being completely shaded by the slope and the trees to the south of them. Those slopes have opened a lot. This valley is really a very refreshing change from the rest of the area, because the rest of the area is beautiful, but you just see beautiful old villages and those and vineyards. I like this valley. It's not deep, it's not steep, it's not that spectacular, but it's different, that it's an incredible hotspot of biodiversity. And now I spot one apple, I guess, how many thousand euros of membership fees should entitle me to a couple apples, right? Oh, come to daddy. It's a good one. The birds have been at it, but who cares? I can share. Here it seems an old cherry plantation has been reclaimed, or maybe those were planted in the last 30 years. I don't know. On such slopes trees grow very slowly, but those cherries, they don't look horribly old. Just wanted to catch a couple Germans foraging in a cherry orchard, but they retreated. In the little creek bed we find walnuts. Here is my first little pile. A nice big old walnut tree. This one should be over a meter thick. What's lying on the ground? Just a little bit light. The wild boars have been here. It seems in general that this one tree hasn't dropped as much loot as the smaller ones back there. In the upper part the valley is more open. Here you can see some typical abandoned old vineyards. Even some old grapevines surviving. The area with the almonds, which was much denser. I could have totally squeezed through this here. Overgrown cherry orchards in the background. Oh, and a couple red apples. Here they are. You see them?